Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something really fascinating, and honestly, a bit provocative. We're going to look at the hidden psychology behind some of our loudest societal frustrations. It makes you wonder, is the moral outrage we see plastered absolutely everywhere today actually about justice? Or is there something a little darker lurking beneath the surface? Today we're exploring a philosophical idea that promises to totally flip our understanding of modern morality completely on its head. So let's get into it and unpack the true roots of envy. So here's a heavy, kind of uncomfortable question. Do people actually think billionaires are immoral, or are they just jealous? Whenever we see massive wealth, figures in the news today like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, there's this almost instant wave of public anger. But our source material today asks us to pause and really think about this. Is this modern anger actually about a strict sense of morality? Or is that outrage just a really convenient mask for our own envy? Let's look at the harsh contrast between what we tell ourselves and what might actually be going on. The illusion, right, is that our outrage is this noble, righteous stand against power and strength. But the reality, at least according to the philosopher we're looking at today, is that it's a secret, deeply buried jealousy. The argument goes that if given the chance, in a flash, most people would instantly take all that wealth and power for themselves. Literally, no question. Which kind of suggests that people don't actually believe power and strength are inherently bad. Instead, the outrage often comes from the fact that people are just angry. Angry because they feel too weak or, powerless to achieve those heights themselves. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Defining ressentiment, the philosophy of bitterness. To really grasp this, we have to talk about the legendary 19th century philosopher who diagnosed it, Friedrich Nietzsche. He defined his core concept, ressentiment, as a psychological state where our modern values aren't actually rooted in a pure, objective sense of goodness. Instead, they're secretly based on envy and bitterness toward the strong. He argued that what we celebrate as goodness is, in many cases, basically a psychological coping mechanism. It's a framework created by the weak to handle their own inability to be powerful. It's a way to feel superior without actually having to put in the work to achieve superiority. Moving right along to Section 2, the Great Value Inversion and how history flipped the script. And this brilliantly illustrates how exactly we got here, because society's moral compass hasn't always praised things like modesty and poverty. Once upon a time, the ultimate virtues of the world were power, nobility, and success. Think of Alexander the Great marching his armies all the way through Persia to India. He was literally given the title the Great because of his conquests. Or the Romans, who were celebrated as glorious for spreading their civilization to everyone they conquered. But then, Christianity arrived and, according to Nietzsche, completely inverted these values. Suddenly, brand new concepts like modesty, poverty, and chastity were introduced and elevated as the ultimate virtues. And this created a massive, unprecedented historical pivot. The ancient warrior, who used to be seen as the absolute pinnacle of human achievement and glory, was all of a sudden viewed as evil. And on the flip side, the poor, the meek, the powerless, they were now viewed as the ultimate good. Through this new lens, physical strength and dominance literally became a sin, and weakness, was brilliantly rebranded as a virtue. Which brings us to a really striking and honestly quite blunt quote straight from our source materials summarizing Nietzsche's view. Christianity cut off the top to make the bottom feel better about themselves. Now, looking at this strictly impartially through Nietzsche's analytical lens, this was his profound critique of that historical shift. He didn't see this new moral framework as some divine truth. Instead, he sought it as a deliberate mechanism of social leveling. Basically, a way to pacify the people at the bottom by convincing them that their lack of power wasn't a failure, but actually a massive moral victory. All right, Section 3, the will to power. Nature's true propulsion. Let's move to and see how this builds, because if our modern morals are an inversion of reality, what is the actual natural state of humanity? Well, Nietzsche argued that everything in nature inherently possesses a will to power. That's the natural driving propulsion of all life to grow, expand, conquer, and assert itself. But that moral shift we just talked about, he argued it goes completely contrary to every natural propulsion of life. It creates a shift toward what he called a will to nothingness. By culturally denying our natural biological drive for power and success, we end up creating this incredibly dangerous, destructive internal void within ourselves. And what happens when a society operates under this will to nothingness? Well, we start to see some severe psychological symptoms. Because we lack the external means, or even just the societal permission, to satisfy that innate will to power, the result is this suffocating guilt and self-destruction. We literally start tearing ourselves apart internally. Because that suppressed ambition, it doesn't just safely vanish into thin air, right? It mutates. It turns into deep resentment directed outward at other people who are successful. And crucially, it becomes a really toxic resentment directed inward at ourselves.
So the crucial point is Section 4, how to reaffirm life and taking command.
So how do we actually escape this cycle? We've diagnosed the historical problem and the psychological toll, but here is Nietzsche's clear roadmap out of the resentment trap. Step 1, reaffirm life again. Embrace those natural drives within you. Step 2, take control and take command of exactly who you are. Step 3 is all about execution. Live unapologetically and proudly. Stop shrinking yourself just to make other people comfortable. And finally, step 4, and this is probably the most critical action, do things in spite of all the bitter and resentful voices that are actively trying to hold you back. The source lays it out perfectly. Escaping resentment means ignoring that cultural conditioning that tells you to be small and instead proudly stepping into your own immense potential.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. Are your values truly your own, or are they born of ressentiment? It's a fascinating, deeply challenging perspective to keep in mind the next time you feel a surge of moral outrage. Are you truly standing up for what is inherently right, or are you secretly fighting the ghosts of your own unfulfilled power? I really hope this explainer gave you a powerful new framework to view the world. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.